My understanding is you start a little bit with a meditation, and I'd be delighted to lead you through that today. And then I'll say some words of introduction after that. But thank you, Tom, for those kind words. One of the things that we're passionate about in the work that I do is to simply help people remember who they are. Okay, so in this meditation, I'm going to invite you to remember and use some of the words that we teach our practitioners of this work. So if you'd like to become comfortable in any way that you'd like to, close your eyes or just follow along in your energy. But just with this first breath that you take, just breathe the universe into your being. And as you breathe out, breathe your awareness back out into that universe. So as you breathe in, bringing that universe in, sending your awareness out, and you join this beautiful loop, moving out further into the universe, moving back in again. It's like you breathe the universe. And you are spiritually, quantumly, beautifully entangled with the universe. Without you, the universe would be incomplete. So as you allow yourself to drift in and out of that beautiful space, just allow yourself to fill the room that you're in with your awareness. And then allow your awareness to drift beyond that. Get a sense of outside. Feel the cool. Sense the weather. And as you drift out even further, you get a sense of buildings, roads, forests, the whole landscape. It becomes very quiet as you drift further into this landscape. And as you drift out even further, just allow yourself to surrender to the expansiveness of who you really are. And as you allow that, drift up and away, you see countries, oceans, curvature of the earth. And as the layers of the human self fall further away, your natural state of being is free as you continue to expand. You are pure consciousness, gently embracing your divine state of being beyond all human knowing and imagination. And you are always this. And in this moment, as this is remembered, the gentle surrender into your magnificence brings a profound return to your resonant state. Felt so easily and naturally. Everything else falls gently away. You are a vibrational being in a universal symphony of light, offering your energy to all there is. bringing harmony and resonance to a life that will soon be forever changed. All is felt and experienced as our journey so naturally unfolds. And as you hold that beautiful space now, remember, this is who you really are. Always remember. And as you allow your awareness to drift back towards this human expression of yourself, this body you chose ahead of 8 billion others on this planet, the only one that would do. The greatest act of unconditional love that we will ever experience is to blend with the eternal essence of our own soul, so beautifully and carefully select. That's who you really are. And as you allow yourself to gently drift back into this space, into this moment, into the beautiful collective group that you are. One energy, one exploration, one conversation. And when you're ready, just drifting back into the time and space of here. Just give you a second because I can't see all your faces, but I'm thinking that you're probably back. I'm spotting some old friends in the audience, which is great, but I can only see the online guys. Rabia, Christina, Kim, good to see you all. Okay. So I'm not sure the size of the group that are in the hall today. Can someone give me an indication of numbers? Well, there's one. Hi, folks. Lovely to see you. Okay. Thanks very much. Okay. You know, I'm going to be talking with you today about a few different things. And I'm going to start talking about Michael Newton's work. And then I'm going to move further into the quantum consciousness work. But I've got a bucket load of stuff that I want to share with you. When Tom invited me to speak, it was almost a year ago. And so that was fantastic to have so much notice to assemble some information. So I want to share with you some philosophies, some concepts, perhaps some stories along the way. I did say to Tom earlier that I would leave questions to the end, but if we're going well for time, then we can pause halfway because there's, if you like, 2 sections to this, and we can take questions at the start. Okay, but other than that, if you've got a question that'll probably start a conversation, we'll leave that to the end. It's my intention to share the information with you that'll be roughly an hour. And after that, we'll open up for conversation and see where that takes us, because I love to explore and to follow the energy of what your group has to offer. Now, what you might notice from time to time, at the moment I'm standing. Okay, what you might see is you might see me sit from time to time and adjust the camera. I've recently discovered that gardening is an extreme sport once you hit your 60s. So I'm just recovering from a little back tweak that I got last week. Okay. I want to mention a very dear friend and great mentor of mine, Dr. Michael Newton. And he was instrumental in helping me to gain enthusiasm to discover what the universe was really about and our place in it. And that's a journey that continues. I by no means claim to have any of the answers. In fact, I'm still working on the questions, but I love to share what I've got so far. Can I ask for a show of hands in the audience how many people have heard of Dr. Michael Newton's work, Journey of Souls, that Tom mentioned earlier, etc.? Okay, some. Good. Okay. So I'm going to recap that because that's instrumental in all of that. The first half of my life, I had a corporate career until I saw the light and got out, if you like. But what that drew me into after 20 years in corporate work was an enthusiasm to understand from an old world that I lived in that was certainly not an echo of the potential of humanity. It showed me how important it was to go looking for answers. I love IONS. I love the work that they do. I'm so glad that you've got a fantastic chapter that's built in Richmond. I've had a chance to meet some of the guys from the Free Association that Edgar Mitchell founded and worked alongside those guys just a little. One of the founders of that organisation is a dear friend of mine. So Edgar's name keeps popping up for me this week in a lot of different ways because I'm reading a book at the moment that's got an article from him in it as well. So great to see his energy continues on from the great work that he started. Okay, I'm going to do a screen share. Okay, everyone can see that all right? Let me know if you can't. So this is, if you like, a presentation in two parts. This is, if you like, the first part around the Michael Newton Institute, what we're doing there. We're going through a lot of changes at the moment with the evolution of consciousness on this planet. We're doing our best to keep pace. After that, I'll talk about the Institute for Quantum Consciousness, the organisation that I founded as well. The Michael Newton Institute's been in place now around 20 years, a little bit longer. Founded, of course, by Michael. There was a little group called the Society for Spiritual Regression for a little while, and then that sort of went through a period of change. We then worked with Michael to found it. I was one of the founding advisory council members and had the great opportunity to work with him, as Tom mentioned, as president for over 10 years. But then we got so big that we couldn't survive with just a president and other board members. So we split the president's role into 4 different board members' roles. So I've stayed on since that time to be part of that. But for me, this is the book that kicked it all off. This is Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, and a quick definition of life between lives, which I'll expand on, is he worked out, accidentally, of course, as many great discoveries are made, he worked out that you take people into a past life, which he originally didn't believe in because he was a traditional psychologist down in California. He discovered by accident that people would go not just into a past life, but go somewhere afterwards. And he christened it the life between lives. Over a long period of time, he perfected a technique whereby he could take somebody into that in-between. And when you're outside of time and space, you can ask questions about this incarnation and your purpose for being. Now, over 20 years ago, when I was first a hypnotherapist and I wanted to get a present for my teacher, I went into the old Borders bookshop, which I think is now extinct as the dinosaurs for old Borders. But anyway, I loved it because you could go in there and you could get cappuccino and read a book and all that. And you could spill coffee on a book you hadn't bought yet, and that sort of stuff. So what I loved about Borders was the metaphysical section, and I'd sort of poke in and out of there. So I was getting out of the corporate game by then. Anyway, I stood in front of the bookshelf and I said, I thought, I'm thinking about my teacher, and I said, take me to the book I need today. And I stepped forward and I pulled Journey of Souls off the shelf. And it was like the earth moved in some strange way. I thought there'd been an earth tremor or something. I looked around. Everybody was still sipping their coffee, flicking through books, doing everything they needed to. So that feeling and that sensation in my body was just for me, and I knew this book was important. I turned it around and read the back and fell in love in the first paragraph about what it talked about, because I'd only become a hypnotherapist in the first place because I wanted to do past life work, because I'd been a past life client. And that had been part of my exit from the corporate world, was to start to look at things a bit differently. So this book started it all for me. Within a year, I was in America learning the work. Within another year, I'd met Michael. We were working together. We were founding the Institute. And all of my corporate executive experience came back to help me as we founded that organization. But that's the book. That's where it started. Okay. So for those of you who haven't heard of Michael Newton's work, he took people between their incarnations. And when you do past life work, often you'll go back and you have a look at one, look at another, look at another, look at another, and you'll sort of leapfrog from lifetime to lifetime, finding great interest. He went in between those and gave us the sweeping view of the lineage of the soul. Now, what that means is if you've got themes that are across a number of lifetimes, they're right there in front of you. You can see them, you can understand them, and you can work with them. So what he found, and this is over a period of time of 35 years and 7,000 cases, he had his first case in 1968, his first accidental case. I don't know what you were doing in 1968, but I think I was getting ready to start elementary school. So that's how long this work has been around, and it's just getting stronger and bigger. But anyway, what he found across those 7,000 cases is that there's a series of common experiences within the sessions. People would go to the same places that have the same conversations, and he was able to map, if you like, the spiritual realm. And people go to their soul group, people go to their spiritual council, people plan their next life in this place that has all the possibilities laid out before them. Feelings of elation and connection to all there is. There was a deep and profound resonance with unconditional love that he found in his sessions. As I mentioned, those contact with spiritual guides and wise beings that oversee us from incarnation to incarnation, the body and life selection. In his books, he talks about having a handful of choices, but you've got to get 8 billion down to the handful to start with. So that's an incredible conversation we have with people in the super conscious state. I'm talking about where we take people into brainwave patterns that is not where they are, but the brain tells us the brainwave patterns are in theta, but they're not in their brain, because we all know consciousness isn't in the brain. The brain's just a receiver, really. But that's the difference between this type of work and other types of expanded states work. This seems to be more expansive, or if you like, deeper. We do certain things in the world of spirit before we come here. In between, we have certain spirit world activities. We might do planning or work with energy. We may have some hobbies and some experiences. That leads to an incredible conversation. There's an extensive use of metaphor because humans get that. Michael's whole work is metaphorically based to a great extent so that it allows for the spiritual integration into human form. We see temples where we visit the wise beings. We might see beautiful gardens where we meet soul friends from different lifetimes. Of course, all of these are created metaphorically out of a beautiful bed of energy in this field of spiritual consciousness. But what it does is allows us to step into that and to understand what they are with our human brain, bypassing that conscious factor filter that we use so much with the analysis in human form and how we've been trying to do. The interesting part about these sessions too is that in the method that Michael devised, we would go back through childhood first. So it starts with age regression, and then we work in utero. Okay, so when somebody is pre-birth, we're still having a conversation with the client when they have one foot in the spiritual realm and one here. And we can ask activation questions that bring the super consciousness into our line of sight. An example of that might be, When did you join the fetus? Oh, I came in at 4 months. Is that early or late for you? Oh, that's about right. Okay, do you ever come early? Yes, if I need more time to integrate with the human body. These are the type of conversations you have when a client is in their superconscious state and have transcended this human intellect and mind. So we'll manage them in utero, then we move into a past life because we want to go into the world of spirit through the front door, as Michael called it. And then we will be speaking to a past life persona, and they'll be in that person, male, female, any point in time and space. And then we move them into the spiritual realm where they move into their soul consciousness, into a very different persona. And the skill that we need to show to manage a client through all of these different personas takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of skill, and takes a lot of training, which is why we just, at the Michael Newton Institute, we only take people who are experienced hypnotherapists and who have also been doing past life work for a while. And the experience of now time. In this place of the spiritual realm where you have the sweeping view of the consciousness, the soul consciousness, and the soul path across various incarnations, the soul lineage, if you like. It's all happening now. Now, interestingly, I'm going to draw some similarities to quantum physics, but quantum physicists are telling us that everything's happening at once. Okay, time is an illusion. Michael Newton found this as well, but later I'm going to talk a little bit about how Michael's work and quantum physics come together. These are the books Tom mentioned. Journey of Souls was his first, Destiny of Souls his second. Towards the end of his writing career, he wrote a book that became a handbook for all of us as LBL facilitators around the world. And we kicked off the Michael Newton Institute. Now, Michael's 7,000 original cases, we've now reached a point where we've done around tenfold his original body of research. And we're finding incredible things, and I'll talk about the evolution of the work shortly as well. But we now have 220 facilitators across 40 countries. Faith Grieger was one of our people there for a while as well, of course, as Tom mentioned. We're in 20 languages. I mean, this work is now being done in China, in Mandarin. We had a great guy, one of our board members, Dr. Teo. He snuck into China and trained LBL facilitators for us because they don't really embrace the spiritual stuff as well in China. But he's got us in there. We have people in China now. As I said, 20 languages. We're a fully registered not-for-profit, and we survive on the hard work of 50 volunteers. It's basically what we do. We've got all of our Facebook and our Instagram and all of those. Got to do all that social media stuff these days to find a reach to the people. But we formed something called the MNI Beyond program. At the end of his third book, that white one on the screen, Michael said, I expect that the next generation of spiritual regression therapists will take the work far beyond what I've done. 2 years ago, we came back and we realised that the work was changing a great deal. We needed to make some changes, and we established the Beyond program. My role on the MNI board is to lead that Beyond program across a range of different projects, and building new infrastructure for Michael Newton Institute, new ways of going about things, and we're making some great changes. An example of that is that when I originally trained 20-something years ago, we had a 1-week residential training. We now have 3 weeks training with 1 residential week in the middle usually, or online, but we space it out and the program goes for a whole year. And we give people an LBL and Beyond coach, sitting through one of our experienced people, guides them over that whole year. So we know that this work's getting bigger, and we're making some steps to make sure we keep on track with it. We're doing ongoing research, and I'm going to share some of that with you today as well. Michael Newton Institute has also published some books. As Tom mentioned, we published Memories of the Afterlife back in 2009, 2019, we probably, or 17, I think, 18 actually, 2018, we published Wisdom of Souls. These are extensions of case studies. We publish those through Llewellyn Publishing. But more recently, we're very excited because we've now established a business within our business, M&I Publishing. So we're now going to publish our own books. As some of you may know, when you go through a publishing house, the first thing they do is they say, will this turn a profit? Because you may or may not know that publishing houses get 85 to 90% of the royalties of any book sold from the author on a standard contract. We felt that we wanted to channel funds into our organisation, and we wanted the freedom to be able to publish whatever we wanted to, because the message we want to get out to the world is not always something that is businessy. So earlier this year, we established M&I Publishing as a new publishing house to publish our own work and potentially some of our people as it gains momentum. Finding Purpose is our first book. More stories of the afterlife that are designed to inspire, and that was launched a couple of months ago. And we have a consciousness series that's going to start as well, that'll come from our ongoing research that I'll be sharing a little later. So the bottom line is this organisation is growing wonderfully and amazing, and we're part of it. Okay. But we noticed maybe 10, maybe 15 years ago that things started to change. That the structure that we had in Michael's books, that the structure was no longer continuing. People were not needing the same map of the afterlife. They were spinning out and having their own experiences. So we've had to evolve, to change, to cope with clients who don't need the structure. We put that down to more advanced souls are incarnating here and don't need the same structure they did back when Michael did the main body of his work in the 70s and 80s. We're seeing more cosmic connections. I know we're heading towards disclosure from governments about contact with off-world races and technologies, but we're seeing that a very heavy concentration as we move into the soul lineage of the clients that we see. We are seeing a larger component of experience in other dimensions and other planets. It's fascinating stuff when people talk about a different type of home world. Because let's face it, none of us are from here, really, anyway. I mean, this is a place where we come to learn, to incarnate, to grow, develop. This is why we come to Earth. But some people are far more familiar with other places, and they may struggle here. And that's a specific group that we work with called Traveller Souls. We help them to find their feet on a planet that is pretty tough in its energy at times. And the other one is that when I first started this work 20 odd years ago, a lot of people were saying, what's my purpose? There was an individualization of something that they were here to do. What we're seeing in sessions now is that people are saying, I'm here to be part of something. I'm here to be part of a collective evolution of humanity. I started to hear that theme as soon as I got into this work, but it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and people are telling me that they're incarnating into this particular lifetime to be part of incredible changes for humanity. And so these are part of the evolutions of the work. What it's meant for us, we've had to redo our training systems. We've had to start to do new types of research to get the background and the experience behind this that we need to then fertilise our education systems to make sure we've got the best possible people around to do this work. One of the most interesting pieces in recent years is, whilst Dr. Michael Newton had a PhD in counselling psychology, last year the first PhD in life between lives work was done through the Berkeley, through the Wright Institute in Berkeley in the Bay Area of San Francisco. And this is Dr. Serena Villari. She published this document, and she used a number of different psychological parameters for measurement. She took a whole group of people before their life between lives experience and after their life between lives experience, debriefed them before and after. She found drops in depression, anxiety, fear of death, psychological inflexibility, search for the meaning in life because it was no longer necessary. while she had an increase in resilience, spirituality, and presence of meaning in life. Now, this is a great piece of work, and it's probably in the public forum somewhere. But this is a wonderful scientific validation of the quality of the work that's done from what Michael started. Okay, she called it spiritual transcendence, study of afterlife consciousness. But yeah, she's doing great things. This year we did some research. We did some research a few years ago into the pandemic. We wanted a spiritual view of what was happening in the world. There was a lot of information around, a lot of interesting information. More is emerging still. But we wanted to step out of human form in order to look at what the pandemic was really about. What was this phenomenon that came to be known as COVID? What was it about? We found that, without going through a whole part of that research, I want to share with you the most recent stuff, not stuff from 5 years ago. It was published in Nexus magazine. It was published in the UK Journal of Humanistic Psychology. But what we basically found was that everything was being wiped off the table, and humanity had to make both individual and collective decisions about whether they wanted to choose fear or love. And that was done by about 30-odd people who went into the superconscious state, our own people, where we ask some of these research questions. That's how we do the research. We take our people, our own people, into spirit. We pair them up around the world, and they both take each other into a session, into their superconscious state, and we ask certain questions, and then we look at the answers. But that was the theme that came out of that earlier research, that whole COVID phenomenon was about us choosing love or fear. Now, that's interesting, because you think that courage and fear, or love and hate, but it was about, do we choose love or do we choose fear? And it was about the purest vibration versus the one that always holds humanity back. Anyway, there's an article available to that, which I can send along if you want to make contact. This year we did some more research. This is part of our evolution towards being an institute for spiritual consciousness, not a group of hypnotherapists who do afterlife work. We believe that we have a greater role to lead spiritual consciousness as an organisation, and we are moving away from hypnotherapy as a tag and into spiritual consciousness as the concept that makes us really fly. So we had 37 completed and received facilitations, pairing people up. Somebody did one twice, obviously. 14 different countries, 4 continents. So this was a large piece of work, and it's going to be published in a book. I managed to steal this off our research team after it was presented at the World Conference in Spain about a month back, with a couple of slides that I can share. But the questions that we ask this year in the research is, we ask people to describe the current consciousness of humanity. How can souls best help humanity in these times? What is the best way for people to contribute to humanity? And so the questions there: how can people easily access their soul's wisdom? What type of souls are incarnating on Earth right now? What advice can we offer people who are struggling with these changes? It would take hours to go through all of the answers to that, so I'm just going to offer a quick snapshot, and I'm going to use one question because I think it's relative to all of us. That last question, question number 7, what is the potential for humanity yet to be discovered? Now, this is a great one to share, because this shows you who you are and shows you the true potential of who you are destined to be, and who we are as a collective destined to be, once we release the limitations that have been placed on us through societal and cultural conditioning. So we were getting answers like these, that there are infinite possibilities to be limitless. Now, this is all coming from people who are in the spiritual realm, in their superconscious state, outside of their human persona. That we're moving more towards a light body that will be less dense. There's this increased heightened awareness, and we're seeing that in a lot of our clients now. There's a high degree of empathic people who are incarnating here. The empaths are people who are very much in tune with the energy of the people around them and of the circumstances in which they find themselves. Unity consciousness, this is a term that Tom mentioned before, this unity consciousness. We've always known about oneness, but this is a term that seems to be coming through more and more in the spiritual research that we're doing. There's something about unity and coming together in a way that transcends any sort of barriers that we see in human form, whether they be religious, political, language barriers, all that. I'll show you how we can solve the language barriers in a moment. But this is about humanity coming together into one wave of consciousness that can do almost anything. And being able to co-create with the universe. Now, this term's not new and it's been around a long time, but it's been validated straight out of this research. Whether it's you reap what you sow, whether it's goal setting, whether it's any of the different forms of this, ask and it is given. But we can co-create with the universe when we know how, when we know that we can. And there's a greater ability to experience joy, peace, harmony, etc., pure love. That's what we're missing. And there's something about being truly free. Once we step out of the restrictions of human form, the limitations of our minds, anything is possible. And there's more. We had comments about how science and technology will evolve beyond what we know. We know that there have been many technologies, if you like, that have been suppressed over time, but that's about to explode into a new level of technology that will be very different from what we've seen before. Huge advancement in medical field. We start to see comments from time to time about vibration, about frequency, about sound, about light. These are all the different types of advancement that come because we're no longer a physical specimen. We are energetic, spiritual beings with energy fields. Chinese medicine has been onto this for thousands of years, but we are energetic beings and we need to work with the vibration and the frequencies of healing. Communication through telepathy. There it goes. It solves the problems of language barriers. And that can happen whenever we do our sessions with people. The communication with spiritual beings in between life is always through telepathy. There's no written or spoken language. And if we can do it there, why can't we do it here? We're still the same souls. That's it. No languages. Mental communication. Teleportation. This was an interesting one. A lot of people talk about jumping timelines and not knowing that they do, but teleportation, to be able to move from one place to another, we can have a client instantly back in the spiritual realm and then back in their bodies or in a past life. So we already know that a teleportation of type is available, particularly when it comes to the expanded awareness, to the consciousness itself. Our consciousness can surf the universe itself. But there'll come a time when we can take our bodies with us. And I've read books where there's been experiments done by governments on teleportation as well. But anyway, that's probably a conversation for another presentation. We are limitless. We are powerful. We need to reconnect with that. And we can access other dimensions and universes just by knowing that we can. Okay. So this is the type of research that we're hearing. We're going to publish some of that again soon, as I mentioned. So one of the things I did more recently, actually, maybe I'll pause for a moment. We're about halfway through, checking time. I'm going okay for time. Any burning questions about anything I've shared so far? I might need some help here to see everybody. Either raise a hand in the audience or raise a hand on screen if you're there. Okay, any hands going up in the hall? Okay, let's continue on with the information and then we'll have the conversation again. Quantum physics. Some years after I was working with LBL, I started to get interested in quantum physics. And I spoke to Michael Newton about it. And he sent me back to his books. And in all three of his books, he references quantum physics. And he speculates about the nature of spiritual consciousness and quantum physics. And if we look, if I just take three pieces of quantum physics out of here, and I know that this screen is probably a little bit small with this writing, so I'll share with you what's in each of these boxes. Linda, you got a question?
How would we participate in your research as individuals?
Okay. At the moment, we're just doing research within our own organisation, with our own people at this point. But let me come back to that at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
I'm going to start at the bottom with this guy. This is a guy called Hugh Everett, who was the first one that put forward the many worlds interpretation. He wrote a PhD thesis in 1957. His supervisor was a guy called John Wheeler, who was a very famous quantum physicist out of the States, and he worked closely with Einstein. Hugh Everett put forward in what came to be known as the many worlds interpretation that the collapse of the wave function into one reality is just one thing that we see, but the universe continues on in all of its different permeations, in all of its different decision points, into a continually unfolding limitless multiverse, and that other realities happen from every little decision that we take. Now, this was groundbreaking, and everyone said, who's this upstart writing such a PhD thesis? Who's this young guy? So at the moment, at the initial stage, he wasn't well received. He was told he was just a little nuts. But by the end of his life, he was hailed a genius. The many worlds interpretation, as it came to be known, tells us that we live in a multiverse, that there are continuing permeations of us that live on in other timelines and allow us to continue to experience life in its fullness that is beyond one single reality and out into all sorts of others. Now, he had all the maths and everything to back this up, but it was thought as something quite philosophical at the time. But it's generally accepted by popular culture now that we may live in a multiverse, and many other quantum physicists have since followed that. My experience is that it is true, because we've expanded people's consciousness into that space. I'll talk more about that in a little while. Werner Heisenberg, okay, his uncertainty principle. He found that when you move to the subatomic level, if you tried to get the position of an electron, you couldn't get its momentum. If you tried to get its momentum, you couldn't get its position. These tiny particles were very slippery and existed in, if you like, a cloud of possibility until some time that the wave function was collapsed or echoed out into other realities, as per Hugh Everett's theories. But the interesting thing about trying to track these particles is sometimes they seem to wink in and out of existence. Now, this confused Heisenberg, because where do they go? But if there are these other realities, there are these other dimensions that they can go to, why would they not go and why would they not come back? So he started conversations that were fascinating. And then string theory turned up as a potential theory of everything, which we continue to look for on the basis that we feel that we could understand how the universe really works through this human intellect of ours, which I think is a journey fraught with limitations anyway. Got to get out of our heads to find the real stuff. So 4 or 5 different versions of string theory came out, that the universe is made of these tiny vibrating strings. They can be small, they can be massive, but if the universe exists in strings, then that takes care of a lot of the nature of reality. I'm not doing string theory justice, but it's more of a philosophy, because once we get down to those tiny vibrating strings, it's too small to do experimentation. So some people still see it as more of a philosophy. But what Ed Witten did was he came up with M theory that absorbed all of the different versions of string theory, because you can't have 5 different versions of the theory of everything. He had 5 different versions amalgamated into M theory by adding another dimension. Now, all the maths checks out on this. I'm no mathematician, so I just trust these guys. But he talked about string theory and the universe existing in 11 different dimensions. Now, if you want to look at us, we're in 4D, if you like. We go up and down, side to side, back and forth. Okay? Imagine a cube. Okay, that's 3D. 4th dimension is time. Okay, we live in linear time, even though we can play with that a little and stretch it. Where are the other 7 dimensions? Now, quantum physics is telling us the atomic model. If you look at the standard model of quantum physics, they tell us that atoms are empty. They're all, we're 99% empty space. Well, this doesn't feel like empty space. So what are those atoms full of? Are they the pathways to these other dimensions? Are they full of the potentialities of what we all hold to move into other places and other dimensions? I don't believe atoms are empty. I believe they're full of something that we haven't found yet. And I feel that that's the potential of the universe itself. There was sometimes when you're in a life between life session, a client comes out with some wisdom and they will correct you because they're in their eternal essence and they'll tell you what's going on. And we are very humbled all the time that we work with a person that are in that state of being. But I once had a client say to me that she had incarnated into this body because she wanted to study the human brain. She says, I'm a researcher from off-world. The best way to do the research was to incarnate in human form and have one of these human brains. And she said to me, do you have any questions? I was a bit at a loss, didn't know what to say. So I just pulled something out of the air that someone had told me once, which I no longer believe now. But I said, why is it we only use 15 or 20% of our brain capacity? And she just said to me, who told you that? I said, oh, a scientist somewhere. And she said, that's completely wrong. She said, you just haven't invented the machinery yet that tells you what the brain's actually doing. Okay, so when we bring our own paradigm to a situation, we are limited. And that's what I love about these 3 guys, is that Hugh Everett was bold enough to put something forward that came to be the many worlds interpretation, talk about the multiverse. Heisenberg told us that things disappear and reappear, and they cross the boundary between these dimensions. And Ed Witten, he put together a theory of everything that absorbed all the other string theories and added another dimension again. So these are the people that I love in quantum physics, because they are the big thinkers that weren't stuck in the standard model. They're the trailblazers. Okay. Well, where does consciousness fit? Well, if we start to talk about spiritual consciousness and quantum physics at the Michael Newton Institute, and I'll show you a slide next that talks about how quantum physics and LBL work support each other. We're researching those other dimensions. We're moving outside of time and space. We're stretching the boundaries of reality through the eyes of our clients and ourselves to find out where that space is. Where can we take consciousness? What are the limitations of human form that we can surpass? That's the research I showed you earlier. We already know about this. I mean, we talk about near-death experiences. People go down the tunnel and they come back. How many more books do there need to be published on near-death experiences until people start to believe? Anita Moorjani's book, Dying to be Me, Eben Alexander's book, the neuroscientist that went to the other side and came back. I mean, and these have been around a long time. I mean, Ray Moody's work, Bruce Grayson's work. I mean, all of these people have been researching near-death experiences for a long period of time. We know there's a tunnel. We know we go home. We know there's a light at the end of it. We know it feels absolutely beautiful. Okay, so spiritual consciousness is more about who we are, because when we're done with these human bodies, that's where we go. Contact with the other side. I mean, mediumship. Mediumship has been around forever. And we know that a lot of this has been proven with good psychics who can actually bring messages through from the other side. These other dimensions exist, and they are within our reach. Past life work. If you look at the stuff done out of the University of Virginia, Ian Stevenson's work, thousands of cases of kids with past life memories, but only in cultures that embraced it. He went to India and places like that, parts of Asia, because the family embraced the memories of the kids. If you're not familiar with Ian Stevenson's work and the great work that Jim Tucker's doing down at UVA now to carry on that, and we've had some contact with those guys over the years at Michael Newton Institute. But, these kids with past life memories, Stevenson's team would put them in a car, drive them across to the other side of town in India, wherever it might be. The kid would walk in and recognise all the relatives. And this is the sort of stuff that is real, that is possible. So if we put quantum physics and spiritual consciousness together, we come up with what I refer to as quantum consciousness. But more about that in a moment. I promised you I would show you a little bit about where quantum physics and life between lives are speaking the same language. This is the phenomenon. Time and space is malleable. Okay. If you're having a good time, the time goes quick. If you're sitting at Christmas dinner with relatives that you don't like, the time goes slow. So time and space is a little bit malleable. We've had so many examples of this in our work with age regression. We go back and to a trauma at 5 years old and someone talks like they're 5-year-old. Past life regression, we can take people to other lifetimes and they re-experience those lifetimes in the now. No one says, oh yeah, that was 2,500 years ago when I was in the Colosseum. A client will describe that they're being chased around the Colosseum by a lion and what it feels like when the lion brings them down. In Life Between Lives, we're outside of time and space. We're looking at the lineage of the soul. But all of this is confirmed, like Einstein talked in the theory of relativity. When you get closer to the speed of light, time distorts. Okay. Any quantum physicist will tell you that time is not locked in. Other dimensions exist and are available. This next phenomenon. Well, that's what string theory, the many worlds interpretation, that's what, Heisenberg was telling us with his uncertainty principle. And we see that too. We access through the LVL experience, connected to other lives, places, dimensions, and I talk more about that in quantum consciousness as well, about how we access those other realities. They're possible. The many worlds interpretation tells us that. And the life selection room, as Michael referred to it, or the ring of destiny, offers access to other options and timelines. What would have happened if I made this decision? What would have happened if I made that decision? So we can not just access the possibilities in a life, but see what would have happened from the different decision points. Energy continues on. The law of conservation of energy is that the energy in the system remains the same. It just changes shape and form. It moves from stored energy to heat energy, whatever else it might be. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, he saw things wink in and out of existence, so they had to come back. Did they leave that system and join another? That's the piece that we need to understand, but energy continues on. We know that when the soul consciousness leaves the body, it goes somewhere. It isn't finished. People think, I'm just this body and this is the end of me. Well, no. We can show thousands and thousands and thousands of stories where that's not the case. The soul continues on in its consciousness and heads home. Okay, the concept of reincarnation is a good example of that. We keep coming back. Quantum entanglement transcends time and space. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. But no medium for communication is necessary. If two particles are quantumly entangled and they are thousands of miles apart, You turn one and it affects the other. You change one and it affects the other because they are quantumly entangled, and it is instantaneous because space doesn't exist either in the same way that we think it does. And we see a spiritual entanglement between lifetimes because there's a part of our soul energy that remains in spirit. So we're forever connected to our soul because part of it is still back in our spiritual home. This is a big one, simulation theory. A lot of people are thinking we're living in the Matrix. I've heard it said to me that the Matrix wasn't a movie, it was actually a documentary. Maybe there's some truth to that. But, as we live in a computer program, perhaps in simulation theory, as it's come to be known, that's more of a psychological model that is constructed in multiple layers for learning in terms of a theory. So it's more of a psychological model, but it actually fits with quantum physics. Okay, if it's a multi-layered reality, then that fits with the many worlds interpretation. What we hear from our clients in LBL is that Earth is the toughest school in the universe, and courageous souls incarnate here to learn, grow, and develop. So we're all talking the same languages, whether it's spiritual consciousness, whether it's quantum physics. Science and spirituality are not just overlapping. They're starting to merge, as long as we take the right science. As long as we take quantum physics as a science of possibility, and we don't take money-influenced research, and we don't have limitations on research like neuroscience that continues to believe that consciousness is in the brain and we need to prove it. And they're not all like that, of course. But sometimes we limit our research by the models that we use. If we want to do true research, we do the research and then we build the model. We don't research within a model of what we already believe. That's not why science was invented. Science was invented to explore things, not to validate what we already know. So we're all starting to talk the same language. This is picking up speed. Quantum physics, life between lives, quantum consciousness, which has been a great field of endeavour of mine for some time now. And what I like to describe quantum consciousness as, people say, what is quantum consciousness? I say quantum physics is the science of possibility. It is a limitless field, quantum physics. It talks about the multiverse. It talks about an absence of time and space. It talks about other realities and dimensions. Okay. So quantum physics is starting to ask the right questions. What is consciousness? Well, consciousness is the fabric of the universe itself. You are walking, talking expressions of consciousness powered through subatomic particles of which have never been assembled in the same way that you are right now. There's never been another you. 8 billion of us here now, limitless numbers of planets, other realities with different experiences that are other versions of you. But the version of you right here, right now, is unique in the entire multiverse. That is mind-blowing. People ask me to define consciousness and what it is. And the only way you can really do it is through the use of an analogy. So I talk about how the universe, everything is an infrastructure of energy. And then consciousness is something for infrastructure of energy. So the analogy that I use is that imagine the ocean floor being that infrastructure of energy. And imagine the ocean being consciousness. And our awareness are the sea creatures that move through the ocean that is supported by the sea floor. So the energy is the infrastructure. The consciousness is the ocean, and our awareness are the sea creatures. Now, the sea creatures don't know the water's there. They just know that reality is as it is. And you might find that we're one sea creature and we've had enough of that, and then we become another sea creature and another sea creature, and we continue this journey of consciousness through the ocean. So quantum consciousness is the science of possibility and the fabric of the universe coming together into a field of work. Okay. What we did was we took 4 pieces of quantum physics and we added consciousness to them. The observer effect, okay, That's what collapses the wave function, double slit experiment. I'm sure you've heard about that stuff. You observe something and you affect it. Well, if you add consciousness to it with the limited possibilities, that becomes your creator effect. They say a lot of things are non-local. Great. Well, if they're non-local, you add consciousness to them to expand them, and then they're everywhere. Entanglement. I've talked about entanglement earlier. And then if we take entanglement and we look within ourselves and we find the universe there, we entangle with all the different versions of ourselves and what it could be. And holographic healing, if we look at holographic healing, then, why would you heal one reality when you can heal all of them? What if you could heal in one timeline and then just say, let's spread this to all the others, because we're in our every awareness, we have our creator effect, we're entangled with all the others, so let's spread that healing to every other version of ourselves across the multiverse. So these are the things that become possible. So on the basis of that, we build a model where we would go out and talk about stored consciousness for this timeline, before, during, and after where we are now in linear time. Often we'll work with somebody on a quantum consciousness type experience. We'll go out through these different realms, bring these realms to us as well. And we'll have a 90-year-old come forward in wisdom, a 5-year-old come forward in their joy, to trade messages. And everyone that comes forward, we raise the vibration of both the client and the person who comes forward. There's an exchange across the multiverse of possibilities that raise the vibration of the client overall. Alternate consciousness, other versions of us that have gone through a decision point and have gone a different direction. We are seriously quantumly entangled with these because we came from the same subatomic particles before we made that decision in the multiverse and split in two directions. We have conversations with other versions of ourselves. Parallel consciousness, well, they're not really past lives, are they? They're outside of time and space, and all past lives are happening now. So they're our parallel consciousness. How can it be that we can heal a past life and send it back there? It's not done and dusted. But we can work with a past lifetime, bring them out of that past life, offer them a gift of healing, whatever else it might be, put them back into that collective consciousness of humanity, and they can be different back wherever they're from. Interdimensional consciousness. We exist in forms other than human. And we've seen that so much, and I'm going to share some research on that in a moment as well. Interdimensional consciousness means we can be in different dimensions, in different forms of life, and that can be quite different. And of course, eternal consciousness is once we move out sort of any type of form, our eternal consciousness is our pure essence of our expanded state that exists in the all areas. And the present consciousness is how we're grounded into this reality. It's both our point of embarkation and our point of return when we do this type of work. So we take people on a quantum consciousness experience that opens all these realms and asks other versions of ourselves to come forward under a specific theme that we work with the client to construct. Okay. Mentioned a little while before about interdimensional consciousness, just now actually. We did some research into this through the Institute for Quantum Consciousness. This is 111 cases of the interdimensional consciousness component. Where do people go when they're not in human form? We did this, these cases took place between 2015 and 2018. We had 24 facilitators across 4 countries. And we had a standard practice that they used that went out consecutively through the realms themselves. The results were quite fascinating. When we're not in human form, where are we? Well, we can be anywhere because of all the possibilities, but the commonalities came up in 4. Roughly 25% of our people, or 23%, had contact with an off-world being that was a component of them. They spoke to themselves in the form of an off-world being. We had clients move into a pure energetic state. They saw themselves perhaps as clouds of energy floating in the universe. They saw themselves as mist on a planet made of forest, whatever it might be. But they were in a pure energetic state without physical form. Nearly 20% of our clients received a metaphoric message. It might have been a waterfall. It might have been a a cloud, it might have been whatever it was, but it was designed to give them a message. What we ask in a case like that, what is the greater message behind you being shown a waterfall? Why have you been shown this? And that's when we get the message. And an energetic life form, a direct experience of being an energetic life form. I've heard people describe being an organism the size of a planet and just be one cell in that organism in order to learn oneness. I've had people tell me that they are a huge sea creature on the floor of an ocean on another planet so they could learn stillness, a creature that was too big to move. So these are the sort of things that we had coming through in this research. There's a research paper that's on my website if you're interested. But another minor theme here, but one that's, since this research was done and I wrote this paper, people who are incarnating here as part of a collective consciousness, they're like a group consciousness, but they are the courageous piece that decided to incarnate. Everything they do in this lifetime goes straight back to the people that are the rest of that consciousness. You know, like they might be a 10th or a 12th of this collective consciousness that's observing, and they send a piece down here in order to experience human form and report back. And that happens automatically. The conclusions that we drew from this research, first of all, that the landscape of the universe, it embraces energy and light. There's no language out there. This stuff doesn't happen in English. It doesn't happen in physical form. It embraces energy and light. And when we move out of physical form, the universe gets so much bigger. But the beautiful thing is that it's within reach. Okay, there's life on other planets. We all know that already. There's billions of planets out there. We only really know one. And the chances of there not being life on other planets is just ridiculous. There is life on other planets, and it may actually be us in other incarnational forms. This was interesting. We can contact off-world civilizations without using physical contact. We had conversations with the expanded consciousness work. We don't need to build a spaceship. We can contact these guys, and so much channeling happening these days with off-world groups. It's becoming quite the phenomenon. And we look up into the universe and we, through our eyes, and if you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, our human senses only pick up a very, very small percentage of what's really going on around us. Once we know that the universe is metaphysical, it completely breaks down time and space as we know it. The other major finding was that we found that clients were offered an experience that they could understand and integrate, hence the use of metaphor and a lot of this other stuff. The universe speaks our language. The universe wants us to get this, wants us to know. And we found that whatever the client needed in that session, it was a relationship with what the experience was. It's like intention is everything. That's our creator effect again. When we go looking for something, we find it. And the metaphor and analogy was critical in integrating the information that we were given. Okay, and the natural world, forests, rivers, as I said before, waterfalls, the natural phenomenon is often the greatest metaphor because we really get it. And there's a greater part of us trying to draw us out of the cities and into nature because that's where the vibration is higher. Okay. Beyond that, a while ago we started to run an advanced course called Universal Consciousness where we train practitioners. And some of the things we're doing there now is that with the predominance of people who have got the off-world lineage, we're taking them to their cosmic home. They might feel homesick, they may not feel happy here. What we do is we step them through a portal to their true home because the resonance of home stays within them, and they become a bridge between worlds and have all the support from the other side. So cosmic home is one of the experiences that have spun off out of the original consciousness work. Vibrational echoes, if you look at the power of moving outside the body, you move out into that greater awareness and you look back at an emotional or physical condition What's the greater purpose behind the sore knee? I've been working my back, and I could tell an amazing story, but I don't want to waste, take up too much time today. But interesting things we find when we move outside of the body and we look back. Okay, we do that for physical and for emotional issues. Empaths, people who are here and they pick up the energy around them. They may have a background in other dimensions or other civilizations where energy is free-flowing and perhaps lighter than it is here. We take them back pre-birth and we repattern them with a different energetic infrastructure to better cope. We're setting the empaths free from having to take on all the burdens of this world, because most of them are natural healers. Ultimate consciousness, we've been mining the multiverse in the future. There's a version of you that has solved that physical issue, that emotional issue, that has met your dreams. We ask from the multiverse, we send an invitation into the future to bring that timeline into your line of sight. And we allow that person to be able to step in and blend their energy and become that. Ancient wisdoms, we've started to go back in time to ancient civilizations where we, if you like, remote view those civilizations to activate healing techniques or do research on what was happening back in, the early Mayan days or the Aztecs or even Lemuria or even Atlantis, whatever it might be. We've been remote viewing those as part of our research. Water consciousness, we've been experimenting with this. You've probably heard of Dr. Emoto's work with water crystals. We're 70% water in our bodies. So we've been working with clients to contact the water in their bodies and to implement 3 frequencies of love, gratitude, and grace. All of those are high up on David Hawkins' map of consciousness. And we work with a client to change the vibrational nature of the water in their body to accelerate healing or to clear disease or to bring well-being. Okay, so we're continuing to explore in new ways with this work. And all of that is our universal consciousness facilitators. That's the work that we're doing with them now. I'd like to wrap up, and we're going well for time. I want to wrap up with somebody asked me, what's the future of consciousness work? Well, I'd offer 3 things. I believe water consciousness is going to emerge as a phenomenon to serve humanity. And I say that because a number of clients over the last few years have said to me, water is not what we think it is. Water has different properties from what we realize. But we chlorinate it, we add fluoride, we do that in so many different countries. Fluoride's been banned in Europe, by the way, now, in most countries. So water is something for us to pay attention to. There's something about the healing properties of water, or from what I've found so far from the research that we've done, water is both a transporter and an activator of consciousness. Okay, our work there is continuing, but what we're seeing so far is that there's more to water than we know. Dr. Emoto showed us this, his water crystal work. I believe consciousness therapy is going to become more mainstream to replace existing systems. I think the days of cognitive behavioural therapy, I think people are seeing the limitations of that now. People are moving away from it. They're looking for mindfulness, plant medicines, that sort of thing as a way to explore and work with trauma. There's a lot of work being done with different hallucinogens to try and deal with trauma now under supervision from practiced facilitators, psychologically based. So I think we're going to see more of the consciousness therapies going to come to the fore. We'll realise that why not use the limitless part of us to help the human part of us? And I think consciousness is going to become more sanctified as a method of research as we mine the quantum field. We have a recorded history. History is recorded by the victors. So what really happened in some of the ancient places and the ancient histories? And why do we only know about the last several thousand years? And when this planet is millions of years old, there must have been other stuff that happened before that. If we use consciousness as the method through which we can take that research further, then maybe that is something that we need to spend more time doing. We've started to do it with the ancient wisdoms, but there's more. All right, more information. Let me wrap this up, and then we can open the floor for questions, have some conversations. These are the three pieces I've been talking about. Institute for Quantum Consciousness is the organisation that I founded to look at science and spirituality starting to blend. On there, there's on the website, there's some free stuff. There's a program called the Transcendence Adventure. It's a 9-stage journey program. These are meditations that go for 10 minutes or 12 minutes. And you work your way through 9 paintings, like the one behind me here. That was put out when my country went seriously into lockdowns and during the phenomenon that came to be known as COVID. I put that out there as a free program to help people who were struggling with mental health or just wanted to expand themselves, wanted to work with it. And the feedback I've had has been just fantastic. So that's on the website. That's free. You'll see the videos. There's a background. It's disguised as a mental health program, but it's actually a consciousness expansion program. Conversations for a New World. I put together some discussion sheets where people get into groups and talk about what the world looks like in 2028 as we bring into being the best possible manifestation of this planet, with world restoration projects, a new leadership model for the world, how we've transcended a lot of the issues that we face now, how we've collapsed the wealth of big billionaires, how they've funded the repair of the world. So anyway, that's a whole scenario that's put together that by people talking about it and running through that methodology and using that as a series of activities, we actually put that into human consciousness to manifest towards it. And quantum consciousness facilitator training. I mentioned the universal consciousness work, which is a year-long or 10-month program that extends it. But the entry point is quantum consciousness facilitator training, where we train people who are facilitators of other modalities already. We don't train people from scratch, but if people are already trained in a different type of modality, then we train them as quantum consciousness facilitators over a 5-day program. Michael Newton Institute, great organisation, continues to expand. We have a quarterly research journal, of which I do 2 blogs in now, one about the Beyond program and one about the In the Spirit of Michael, where I go back to leverage some of Michael Newton's thoughts and expand them. We had this book in 2009, this one in 2018, and we've got our new book that's just been launched as well that we're very excited about as we become a publishing firm. That's where you can find a Life Between Lives practitioner. Of course, on this one, you can find a quantum consciousness practitioner. This is where you can find a Life Between Lives practitioner. And my own personal website, quantumconsciousness.com.au. I too facilitate sessions for people of either LBL or quantum or universal consciousness. That's the book that was originally launched by Llewellyn in 2018. This is a book I launched last year, which is actually a novel. It's about a quantum physicist who discovers consciousness. And she's in the middle of her PhD trying to blend Heisenberg's work with the M theory and with string theory and all of that, trying to pull all of that together into her PhD, and she discovers consciousness on the way. There's a bit of mystery and a bit of interesting stuff in there as well, of course, as a bit of a gripping novel at times. So I was given the message that rather than write another non-fiction book, the way to open to a new audience was to write a fictional book that drew on the work that we've been doing for quite some time. Okay. I've been talking for a long time. So it's time for me to sort of pause, ask about questions. We've got about 20, 25 minutes left. Let's have some questions. I see Linda's up there with her hand. So Linda, is this back to the question you had before?
What is the name of the novel that you just referred to?
The Transcendence of Celest Kelly.
The Transcendence
of Celest Kelly. There's a link on the website.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
We have
Comments,
we have a
questions?
question in the main room here.
Great. I'm just gonna sit and give my back a rest, but I'm still here.
Hi, great presentation. Okay, great presentation. I read Journey of Souls many years ago in the hypnotherapy and got into it and everything. And I'm curious because I know I'm going to reread it to see how my mind has changed because I've been exposed to so much more. With that, going along those lines, with the research that you have done, and I was trying to look at your website to see what countries you're in, has any of this work really been done on people that are not exposed to these ideas to see if there's a synchronicity? I mean, I'm just going to pull off the top of my head, like an Eskimo somewhere. And I know that's probably no longer politically correct. Sorry, y'all. But, someone way out that is not exposed to these ideas, to see if they come up with the same thing. Because I hear a lot of people talk about, okay, I've been a Pleiadian, I've been a Lumerian, I've been to Atlantis. But we've been exposed to it. Like, I love Star Trek, so I trust hardly anything that comes out of my mind unless it's really out there, because I've been exposed to so much. So are you finding that in your research? Are you really dealing with people who are not in the quote unquote, first, third, second, whatever worlds that, you know what I mean? That, or their spirituality doesn't contain past life or future life or these types of thoughts and sciences? That's all one question.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I just want to say on behalf of the Eskimos that that's okay. I can imagine somebody saying, but I wanted to incarnate it as an Eskimo. Don't take that away from me. Anyway, let me offer that this work is profound, and preparation to get somebody ready to do this work can take time and effort. And I'll often use that Transcendence adventure that I mentioned on the website as a way for people to work through that journey program just to help themselves get ready. You don't go and try to do something to a person that doesn't want to do it, because that's not the best way to see research. You're better to get a sample of people who want to be part of a trial. Like, even if they do some sort of a clinical trial on anything, people volunteer for it. So with any of the research we've done, it's usually come out of service to the people, rather than we've done sessions for people and we've served the people, or we've asked for volunteers. So they come forward and we need to help to prepare them. Once they move through and they have those experiences, then we take the data from those experiences and then we analyze it and then make assumptions. So we wouldn't do research on people who were not applicable to where we wanted to, that didn't meet the scope of the research. If you look at Dr. Serena Vallari now, her PhD that I mentioned earlier, she started with a larger number, but she discounted people at every turn because they didn't meet the criteria she needed to have the research done in a way that had both quality and consistency. So good research normally drops the people out. There is, I gave up my hypnotherapist tag a long time ago. I'm more of a consciousness facilitator now, or researcher, or author, whatever. But I don't do hypnotherapy anymore. I don't take people down to trance, take them out of their body. But there's an assumption that I sometimes throw water on in different forums that I'm part of that support Michael Newton Institute or my own work. And they say, 10% of people can't be hypnotized. And I say, no, 10% of people can't let go. So if you're one of the 10%, you've got to find out why. Because everybody can move into their expanded states, because everybody's consciousness is the size of the universe itself. So if you've got something in the way, find out what's in the way, don't wave it away and say, I'm one of the 10%, you can't hypnotise me. There's a defence mechanism there that needs to be explored. So I know I'm flying off at a tangent there, but I think it's important for us to, when we do this research, we want to show the potential of what's possible for humanity rather than say, well, here's a group of people that weren't ready. Does that help?
That's cool.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions? If you're online, raise your hand so we can see you. Or
Hi, Pete. I'm Ariana. It was a lovely presentation. Thank you. I'm going to out myself. I was a huge nerd today and brought your quantum consciousness book with me because I thought you were going to be here. And I was, yeah. Anyway, it's great to see your face anyway. My question is, you said the future of this research has to do maybe with history and using consciousness to sort of form the pieces where we don't have record of. My question is, wouldn't there be limitless possibilities? Would people come back with, maybe contradicting information if it's limitless?
great question. It would need to be done not in isolation of one particular person. If you were going to, let's say you wanted to research the Battle of Hastings. What really happened in 1066? Okay, now the victors record what really happened, but if you could remote view, almost, if you like, transport the consciousness, remote viewing's got certain connotations, but if you were to free the consciousness of a number of people and you would take them back and they could remote view the Battle of Hastings, and they might come back, and then you would compare notes. So if you were doing something to check in on history, then you would want to, because everyone has their own perception as well. If there's an auto accident and there's 5 witnesses and they take 5 statements, they're all different. So what you need to do is you need to look for the commonalities to get the robustness and the integrity of the data that's there. And that's what we do in research. We look for the commonalities, we look for the validations between the different pieces of data that show us that there's a trend, and then we can analyse the trend, and then we make an assumption and we put it forward as an assumption. We never put it forward. We might call it a finding, but in a multiverse, I mean, anything's possible, as you said. So I just think it's a good way to maybe change history. We know that there have been lots of places. I mean, one of the greatest tragedies in history was the burning of the great archives in Constantinople. Okay, so many records of humanity were lost that day. But what if we could go back and we could retrieve those records in other ways? And I think that, we know that history's been written and rewritten and then published and unpublished and then taken away, and, societies have burnt books and done all sorts of stuff. I just think that there would be a purity to mining the collective consciousness in a way that has both integrity and accuracy. So I would love to see organisations set up to do that. I'm a little busy to start one, but I'd love to see that sort of thing happen as part of the way that we look at history. And thank you for buying the book. I wish I was there to sign it. I live in the tropics, and I could really do with a cool day. Humidity's here about 100%. I'm sitting under an air conditioner and a fan. So I live right up the top point of Australia, in that point near the Great Barrier Reef. So, yeah.
So there was a question in the chat. What is Donald Trump's role in the future of humanity?
That's probably a question for Donald Trump. Yeah, look, I think that we need change in the world. I'm not talking particularly as a Donald Trump supporter or not, but I believe in change. I believe that humanity needs to change urgently and significantly in order for us to meet our full potential. Now, people come along who stir things up and bring change, and it upsets us and it makes things more difficult culturally for a while. And to be honest, I think that any change that comes in the now is good. Some people are a catalyst for change. They may not be, everybody's cup of tea, but I think it's important to look past the events of the world, of what's happening in different places. And I think we need to realise that humanity needs to change, and anyone who's going to bring change, whether it be palatable or not, is going to take humanity on a new path. I mean, why do we still do wars? There's so many agendas that are of the wrong consciousness when it comes to human greed, materialism, power, fear. All of these agendas are the ones that hold humanity back. So I do believe that for humanity to move to the next level, I think that we'll see the collapse of political systems, financial systems, educational systems, and medical systems. Those are the 4 collapses, and I think something better will take their place. Because I think there's the shift in consciousness. When consciousness shifts, old systems fall away and new ones form. And I'd like to see the new ones form quickly.
Sounds like we're on track.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening in your country. Yeah, acknowledge that.
Pete, Tom Coates, what a wonderful presentation.
Tom.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for the invite, Tom.
I'm going to ask you one thing I asked you when we met online the first time about a year and a half ago. There has been, in recent years, a growing, small, very small but growing number of people in the scientific community. Donald Hoffman being the leading edge of that, but others like Federico Fagin, the Italian-American physicist who invented the microprocessor, Dr. Tony Nader, who has a big online presence, he's a neurosurgeon, I believe, have been promoting something more akin to Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, that like Vajrayana Buddhism, that all is consciousness, all is spirit, and that what we know as space-time, including the quantum phenomena and all that, are just simply emergent properties of consciousness and nothing more. And so, although quantum physics and mechanics has been a useful tool for the last century or so from a philosophical perspective, and has given us lots of ways to structure things like adventures in consciousness that we didn't have before. It seems to me that this idea that consciousness is really the substrate beneath all of it gives us a new avenue of approach that there's going to eventually require new metaphors, new language, new structures to explore. I've asked for your comments on that.
Well, I'm reading this book at the moment, and it's one of the names you mentioned. So I think you're right on the money, Tom. I think, if consciousness is consciousness, then science needs to be a piece of consciousness, but we need to understand that consciousness isn't a piece of science. And so consciousness is the big piece, and science is part of it within there. My take on science is that a lot of people are locked into their existing models of science, when the whole concept of science is to move beyond the models. We have to move beyond the models of the human condition as well to truly explore the universe. I think consciousness is the answer. When Tom Campbell was working for the Monroe Institute for all those years, I mean, that was about a scientist doing consciousness and doing it in a way that can be happen. I mean, Michael Newton, very scientifically based, but he had some things happen in his clinic that told him that he had the wrong model. So he built a new one. And I think as we use consciousness as the springboard for expansion of knowledge, I think that's the future of humanity. I think everything is consciousness. I mean, as Greg Braden said, and I mentioned something similar before, you know, we are this incredible, unique collection of subatomic particles powered by consciousness itself. So, yeah, I'm a fan of everything you just said. I think consciousness is the future of humanity, but I'm always careful not to define it too succinctly and maybe use that metaphor about the ocean, because I think consciousness is limitless. As soon as you try and put some words around it, you lose something. So it's about understanding that it's an energy and it's a vibrancy and it's a landscape waiting to be explored. I think that's where we need to head.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Allowing the possibility that there is a plan at the level of a hierarchy beyond this planet, allowing for that possibility. What can we do as humanity to further the relationship and to be open to the guidance of that hierarchical consciousness, regardless of where we see it in space and time? What is our role as humanity in group consciousness to allow that to be furthered? Thank you.
Great question. I think the first thing to accept is that we're part of that too. Okay, we are a divine expression of a greater consciousness. And, you know, you talk about the hierarchies, and I get that, because in human form that looks bigger. But to know that we are more than this is the first step. Because I think ultimately when we move towards our divinity, we're guiding ourselves. So my first comment would be to embrace the fact that there is so much more to us than we know. And once you breathe out the limitations of what we've been told that we are and who we're supposed to be, then that brings further possibilities. But if I want to go back to the super consciousness that we were dealing with in that research out of Michael Newton Institute that we did 5 years ago, it all came down to one thing, came down to the choice of fear versus love. If we choose love and we choose the higher vibrations of what's possible, then I believe that the universe is ours. So in order on how to embrace it, my answer is really simple, and do love as often as you can with anyone that you can in a way that just raises the vibration of the interactions between people. When that ripples out further into humanity and we become more closer to oneness than we already were, then I think that's what we all should be doing. You know, I look at this now, you're in a group full of people who've come together under a common energy of wanting to understand a little bit more about what I do and what I can offer. I mean, that's oneness. Oneness takes many forms. Do oneness wherever we can. We've got to move past separation, because separation is an illusion. Whether it's that bit up there that we feel is the divine piece that we're not part of, no, in oneness we're part of that too. So express your divinity whenever you can and do love would be my simple answer.
I'm back. So just expanding on the question, I don't think I was clear and I was probably too worthy, but I'm not going to address that same question, something adjacent. So with all the research and the consciousness expanding and so forth, what are you finding, or do you find that people are also having maybe memories, ancient memories, parallel lives as things that are non-human, like the dog, insects, things like that, and what does that bring to your research? So for example, I'm seeing, like, I love YouTube and I love when the doggies press the buttons and talk to their owners, and I think they've always been conscious, you know, and now they're letting us know because we have the technology, the technology to talk with them like that. But there have been folks who can, there's someone behind me who is a pet medium. I already apologize. I'm not going to call her out, but she's able to communicate more clearly than a lot of us, or people here who have pets know that they can clearly express themselves, not just that they're hungry or they want to go out, and they're concerned. So what is that? How is that filtering into the research that you're doing, since they're having these lives between lives and contact with off-world entities and such and so forth?
Thank you. My experience of expanded states when people move into non-human form is they're more often in those energetic states or in a type of life form that's on another planet. Now, people don't normally go into animals on this world much, because I think that the greater power that we're all part of takes the opportunity to stretch people's horizons. We already know about our dogs and our cats, and we have that beautiful and loving relationship between them here already. My experience with the expanded states is that that tends to get stretched into new areas. So with the research that I've done, I haven't seen a lot of human animals come through. However, I know from personal experience, you've only got to look into the eyes of a dog or a cat to know that there's a precious soul there. And, we're spiritually entangled with those beautiful animals that become part of our family. And I know that grief of losing a pet can be even greater than the grief of losing a human person. So, the fact that there are people who can communicate with animals across the veil, I think, is a beautiful thing. What a wonderful gift to let us know. So thank you for the work that you do as an animal communicator, the person in the audience there. So let me say as well that on occasion when I've done Life Between Lives work, the pet dog has jumped in and into the session and come through just to let them know they're okay. And it's normally a bit of a passing thing. They come in and they have a pat and then they go. They just wanted to check in and let people know that they're okay. So I've seen that happen a lot in LBL sessions over the years. Not common, but it does happen.
Looks like William online has his hand up.
William, he must be one of my distant relatives with a name like Smith.
Sorry, I had to unleash myself. Yes, very fascinating. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I'm in really system sciences and so on, and I've been trying to introduce the level of spirituality to system science and so on, and philosophy to be more holistic and so on. But myself, I'm struggling with how to deal with what I call the dark side. In other words, I sense the age of enlightenment has left us with a lack of respect or understanding of the dark side, and that leaves us open to misinterpreting what is going on and so on. And I wondered whether you had any ideas or avenues and so on that would help me see the dark side in a different light, or in, whatever.
I'm a big believer we're in creating our own reality. I just don't give the dark side energy. And I know that we are a universe in balance. And I think that we can embrace the light whenever we do. And I had a dear friend many years ago who first defined darkness to me as an absence of light.
Yeah.
And, if darkness is an absence of light, and if they say no to the light, then we need to respect free will on the basis that that's their choice. But with some of the challenges I've seen over the years with people who doubt, or people who try to take things down, I know that they're usually expressing their own belief systems. I know that they're normally coming from their own space, and that's okay. But I found that since I didn't give things energy, I see less of it. Mainly it's out of my line of sight energetically, and we just get on with the job, continue to talk about the light as much as I can, and I just don't give it energy. Now, I know that probably sounds too simple, but when I turned away from those conversations and just decided to have conversations like ones with this group, I found the other stuff doesn't hold me back anymore.
Yeah.
I hope that helps. If you want to chat more about that one-on-one, send me a note.